He shifts his feet, but bumps the tripod, repositions it, wipes his damp palms on his pants. There's a scraping sound, and a guy near the van says, "Quit spilling it on my fucking shoe." "Shh," says another guy. Fetzer's voice is a close-by murmur, "And they're using aluminum sulfur for the igniter." It occurs to Nelson that Fetzer, with nothing to do right now, has chosen to stand beside him instead of Jen on the other side of the barn. If Nelson asked, Fetzer would probably shrug and say something like, his feet hurt, and he can't be bothered picking his way over there in the dark. But they both know that Jen is in her element, surrounded by these brigadier kids on the cusp of a firebombing. The energy coming off her the past few days has been palpable. They both know, even if Fetzer won't articulate it, that there's a comfort in each other's company. "We're like the Three Musketeers," Jen once joked, and Nelson had to explain that it wasn't a good analogy because the Three Musketeers didn't share their urgent need to save the planet. "But still," Jen had said, and she wiped the cuff of her plaid shirt under her nose. "They rode around and did rad shit." Nelson imagines the three of them on horses, and it makes him smile. For a moment it seems marvelous, beautiful that they've stuck together all this time. Fetzer was drunk the one time he told Nelson years ago about napalm bombing. It was like the end of the world, he'd said. He'd witnessed it burning through to bone. It burns, bone keeps burning. Bones. Barns. Paint it on the heavy beams to keep them burning. Nothing more pathetic than an arson strike that fizzles because your incendiaries are weak. The barn is black against the starry sky. A flashlight swings a slippery beam, making grasses, shrubs, and feet surreal. Then the light bobs and bounces with footsteps that crunch across the dark. Maybe it's Jen. Nelson turns on his headset mic. "Camera 2? Forgot my water bottle," Jen's voice says in his ear. Earlier, in the dusk light, Nelson saw a patch of Sierra Valley Ivesea just starting to bloom. Those tiny flowers. Ivesea aperta varietal aperta, a species of concern, according to the feds, and too beautiful to lose. Last time he visited this area, he was a grad student researching the genus. Now, he's about to film an arson by a bunch of people who are stomping all over the place. Jen better not be stomping on any Sierra Valley Ivesea. Nelson tips back his head, and the night sky fills his vision. The silence of the stars. If he'd carried on with his normal life, right now he'd be asleep in bed with Lise. His neck hurts, and he brings his gaze back down. Over a decade ago, it was hard work looking for that plant, eyes on the ground for hours. Finding one was like finding a jewel. It was only his thesis, but it felt like he was writing a book of jewels. Now, here in the dark under the watching stars, he's pointing a camera at a barn in the last minutes of its existence. Back when Nelson was doing his thesis, he would have despised who he is today. Fetzer's profile changes, listening. There's a faint rumble in the distance. "Helicopter?" says Nelson, and already his heart is thumping louder than the faraway sound. There's a guy in the van with a police scanner, but who knows if he can pick up aviation communications. Fetzer's inhalation makes a quiet whistle in his nose. "That's not a helicopter," he says like he's not sure. He holds still. "That's a semi-truck, compression braking on the freeway." The sound fades. Nelson breathes in deep and pulls his hands out of his pockets. Squints to the viewfinder. Battery's full. Manual focus is on, just like it was 5 minutes ago. Fetzer murmurs, "That girl Emma was giving you the eye earlier." Nelson puts his hands back in his pockets. The last thing he needs right now. "She's pretty cute, don't you think?" Fetzer adds. "She's what, 19, 20? Fetzer sighs. The horses are pacing. One of the brigadiers, Brian, whisper shouts, "Ignition in 5 minutes!" Nelson looks over to where Jen should be in the dark. "Camera 2? He says into his headset. Jen's voice comes into his ear. "Locked and loaded." Brian stage whispers, "You camera guys ready? This is it. Where are you, Jen? Want to make sure the horses don't run..."